welcome back to Plow and Pantry. I'm Alicia if you're new here, and today we are doing another March Canning Madness video. This is a collaboration with Constance from Cosmopolitan Cornbread. You want to go check out her channel. She's putting together a playlist with everybody who is participating in the March Canning Madness collaboration and all their videos. So if you want more canning videos, you might want to check out that playlist. I also have a canning playlist. Today I am making some taco pickles, curditos, escabeche, whatever you want to call them. I used to live in Southern California where there was an abundance of great little taco shops, taquerias, and they always had these pickled vegetables that you could put on your tacos that I loved. And it's one of those things where every place was different. It's kind of like, you know, your mom's recipe or grandma's biscuit recipe. Everyone has their own way of doing it, their own little secret whatever. And I decided I like to make them now and use them at home when we have tacos. But I usually do a quick pickle recipe, and today I decided to do a canning recipe so that I wouldn't have to make them right before tacos, that I could just have them on the shelf and ready. In the interest of full disclosure, I'm just mixing these up here. As evidenced by the mess, I have just been chopping a bunch of vegetables. I wanted to save you that time to not watch me. I used my food processor with a slicing blade to slice up a bunch of things, and I will get to that in a second. But in the interest of full disclosure, this is a Rebel canning recipe. Normally when I make up a recipe, I will pressure can it to make sure, like absolutely sure that it's safe. But these I wanted to still be crunchy, and the pressure canning I would have had to do like 35 minutes, and I just didn't want them to be too mushy. But what I did was I studied like every pickle recipe from any reputable source, the National Center for Home Food Preservation, Ball Canning, stuff like that, and looked for like what was in common in all of those recipes to make this up. So what I put in this bowl is a combination of things. My favorite vegetables from the taco shops. Some of them had like cauliflower in them and a bunch of other things. I liked the carrots and radishes and onions and a little bit of jalapeno. So that's what I have in here. I use my Kraft, my food processor as my measure. I have one of these of onion and one of these of radishes and one of these of carrots. Those are my three favorite parts. And then I also throw in, I think like 6 jalapenos, sliced real thin. I was trying to keep them in rounds, but some of them broke because I rolled them to get the seeds out. And then I put a whole bunch of cilantro in here too. And I've got my chicken tub, and I've got my compost tub, and I've got a mess. But the next step to this for me is going to be to start the brine that goes in these. And so I'm gonna bring you over to the stove to start that. Okay, I already have my jars over here getting happy in the water bath canner, getting all sterilized. And now I'm gonna get some brine going. I want a nice big pot here. All right, so I'm going to use mostly white vinegar, but I have a mix that I'm going to do just for flavor. So I'm going to start with vinegar, and I'm going to use a combination of white vinegar and apple cider vinegar. I might throw in some red wine vinegar too. Let's do 2. We'll finish that off. 2.5 cups. So I want 5 cups of vinegar total is what I'm going for. And I think because my red wine vinegar is 5% acidity, I'm going to go ahead and use like a cup of that. Finish that one off. I'm clearing out the pantry still. This is a 4-cup measure, so I need another cup. I just like the flavor of red wine vinegar with pickled onions, and I like apple cider vinegar with pickled everything. White vinegar is your standard. It's got a good constant acidity rate, and it's cheaper. And I don't know if I will be making enough brine to cover all my pickled vegetables. I might do a quick pickle with what's remaining for later this week. Okay, 5 cups of vinegar. I'm gonna go with 2 cups of water. And I used hot water just because we're getting this stuff going, you know. Okay, I'm gonna use 2 tablespoons of salt. This is pickling salt, which is just so that it doesn't discolor, doesn't have any additives or anything in it to discolor the canning or mess with your vegetables. And I'm going to do 2 tablespoons of sugar. This is not a sweet pickle, but the sugar is, it kind of takes just a little bit of edge off, so it's good. I'm going to do spices now. I want a big, or seasonings, a big heaping tablespoonful of garlic. And I'm going to do a teaspoon of Mexican oregano. You can use regular oregano if you can't find Mexican oregano, but this is, it's a slightly different flavor, and I like it for this. You can usually find it in a regular grocery store in the Mexican food section. I used to live near a really large Mexican supermarket, and that was convenient for a lot of this food. And then a teaspoon of cumin. Standard flavor for tacos. All I need to do with this is bring it to a boil and boil it for 10 minutes. 3 minutes. So I somehow lost audio on this part, so I'm going to have to voice over to walk you guys through it. So I'm just taking my vegetables, giving them an extra toss there, and putting them in the jars. I'm packing them really tight so that I can get as much in each jar as possible. That's pretty typical with anything you're doing like a brine and canning, because believe it or not, you'll think it's completely packed, and then after it comes out of the canner, there'll be space in the bottom with just liquid and no vegetables in it. So I'm packing them really tight. This is just that combination of thin sliced onions, thin sliced carrots, thin sliced radish, some jalapeno, also thin sliced rounds, and a bunch of cilantro. I have put my brine in the pitcher there because I find it easier in this type of situation to pour it with a spouted pitcher rather than ladling it through a funnel. These are pint jars, so they're 2 cups each. You could do a half pint, either one. So now that I have those jars packed full, rinsing off the bits of cilantro that like to stick to my fingers, I'm going to start pouring the brine in. These do need a 1/2 inch headspace on them, so I fill them up. I'm showing you there's like a mark where the threads are for the canning rings. There, you can use those in certain parts of the jar because they're not exactly straight. You can use them for telling if you're a 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, 1 inch down, but the middle one is the 1/2 inch mark. So I eyeball it with that first, and then I debubble and I look for how close it is all the way around. Got a few little bits of onion sticking up in there that I keep squishing down. But the vegetables are packed up to that 1/2 inch mark. I'm taking the liquid to it. You really want them underneath the liquid, but still with a 1/2 inch headspace. And I'm just getting them all full. And then once I think they're ready, I use my little debubbling tool. You can use anything. You don't have to have one of these tools. You could use a butter knife or something. And I'm just going around the edges. There will be a lot of air pockets in this because it's a bunch of cut vegetables smashed together. I do like the thin sliced rounds of carrots and radishes and onion in this, but you can do more of a chunk if you want. Some restaurants I used to go to had more chunk type things, but I like these thin slices, almost like little chips in mine. And that's, again, the joy of making your own food at home, is you can make it whatever shape, flavor, etc. that you like to have. I'm just going through debubbling, double checking my headspace. A couple of them were a little bit low, so I needed to add a little bit of brine, because that's what happens when you debubble. If that air gets released, then the level goes down, and so that's why you check. The headspace is important in canning. It has to do with the space that has been determined for it to need for creating that vacuum seal. If you have your headspace off, it might not seal right, or it might not create a complete vacuum. You could have bacteria growing in there, that kind of thing. So you want to pay attention to headspace. I am wiping the rings with vinegar. That is what I typically use. It cuts through grease or sugar or sticky things, stuff like that, and make sure that the rims are nice and clean. I like to turn my cloth every time I start on a new jar. And then I add my extra vinegar from that little dish into my canning water. Then it's time to get the rings and lids on. So I'm pulling out my lids. I just grabbed jars from my cabinet. I didn't look for all the same type. So I have some regular and some wide mouth. It really doesn't matter. So I get my lids on there now that they're clean and get my rings screwed on fingertip tight. Again, that means that it's not cranked on really, really tight, but it's not loose either. You want the air bubbles to escape, but not your canning liquid or solids. That helps create that seal. And so now these are ready to go into the canner. So I get these in the canner. At my altitude, I process these for 20 minutes. If you are at 1,000 feet or below, you can process for 15 minutes. So I got these in and lowered, and you don't start your processing time until the water comes to a boil. So I'm getting these in and lowering them down to the water, and then waiting for the boiling before I start my timer.